Today I'm going to be talking about my most recent app that I launched. It's called Drip. And what I want to talk about are specific tactics that I took on validating the idea and then building the launch list, working out the onboarding and launching. And we hit recurring revenue of $7,000 in the first month. And there's a lot that went into it that's very specific that I haven't spoken about in the detail that I'm going to talk about today. So even if you've heard me on an interview talk about this, even if you've heard me talk about it on the podcast, I'm going to be giving away like exact emails that I sent and some of the thought process behind that, as well as screenshots and other things. So I hope to make it worth your while. I always like to give away as much as possible at MicroConf because people have come here to see the exact details of it. So what's in it for you? Whenever I consume media, audiobooks, podcasts, blogs, I know that I'm evaluating like, why am I listening to this again? Why are you giving me 45 minutes of your time? And so I'm going to cover 4 topics today. So if you are, whether you're in early stages or whether you are already launched, I'm hoping to touch on something for everybody to add to that list of tactics that you can take home and change your business. So the first one is I'm going to give you an approach to idea validation. It's the approach that I use that seems to have worked with Drip. It's not the only approach, but I think it's a good one, and I'm going to go into detail on that. I'm going to talk about how to build your launch list, and this is perhaps the most common question I get because I had 3,400 emails on the launch list. It's the biggest launch list I've ever had. And I was I won't say I was fumbling my way through it, but I didn't know. I figured if I got to 500 or 1,000, I was going to be happy with it. And by the time it was 3,400, I was pretty impressed with where all the stuff came from. So I'm going to show you exactly where each, where the 500 came from and the next 900 and all that. I'm going to talk about the benefits of a slow launch, and this is the term I use for, it's kind of the opposite of what Josh Pigford talked about, where he said he launched 30 days. We built for 5 months and then launched for 3 or 4 months. Like we were in just constant customer development and then actually launching in these waves. It may have been a 5-month launch. So it's the opposite of that, but we learned a ton from it that is allowing us to start scaling up pretty quickly. And then the last thing is onboarding. I'm going to walk through onboarding. It can make or break your launch. It can make or break your business, certainly, because it impacts how many people get value out of your app and how many people actually stick around and don't bleed out of your funnel. So, even if you have an app now, you're probably, knowing all the people in here, you're going to launch another one in the next year or two. A lot of us do that. Even if you aren't, the onboarding piece, I think, will at least lend some insight for everyone here in the room. So, these are my kids with Santa. I just added that in and then is the Wi-Fi working?
Hitman 2-2, this is 212 Romeo, be advised. We're getting a code 404 on a page in your sector. Intel suggests this page is hostile, potentially equipped with small arms. Can you confirm the status in your sector? Over.
Copy that, 212 Romeo, code 404, code 404. We have reports of a rogue site in this sector, but so far, no contact.
Solid copy, Hitman. You are clear to engage. Over.
Solid copy. Out. You got eyes on anything?
So we won't watch the whole thing. What they do is they shoot the guy. It's a Vietnam thing, right? They shoot the guy and they run up and it's a web page and then they say code 500, the server is down. So that is an actual a 404 page. If you go to Nosh, N-O-S-H, is that what it was? NOSH.com/whatever, blah, right? It gives you 404 and that video is there. I thought that was so cool. I love stuff like that. All right, so I'm going to I have 4 parts today. Each one's going to be between 9 and 10 minutes, so we'll be out of here in about 42 minutes. And part 1, I'm going to talk about how to scratch your own itch and how not to scratch your own itch, how touching on both sides of that can lead to success. So we all know, probably everyone in this room has heard that we need to start with problems, right? You don't start with the technology and say, what can I build with this? Maybe if you're an explorer, you do. But you don't start with your idea of what someone might, a really cool app idea, right? If you're here at MicroConf, self-funding, you probably don't do that. But I want to tell you a story about a friend of mine who started with a problem. And it was a blog search submission. He had a bunch of blogs he kept creating. This is about 7 or 8 years ago. And he built this service to submit, because he had a problem. Everyone's like, scratch my own itch. If I need it, everyone needs it, right? So he goes and builds this, spends a couple months, launches it, actually gets a pretty good chunk of traffic. And it works for him. It works for several thousand other people. But he was never able to get anyone to pay more than about $1 or $2 for it. He started making about $50 a month from it. And that was it. And so after about 6 months of nights and weekends, it wasn't a success. There was some learning, but it didn't work. So he started with a problem. He scratched his own itch. It's just one story, but that's what can happen. And that friend was actually me. So I built this in 2005, 2006. It's called FeedShot. And I think it's still live on the internet. I don't actually own it anymore. Someone bought it off me. But this is what I call the scratch your own itch fallacy. Okay? It's not the scratching your own itch can't work, but I think it works a lot less than it used to. I'll put it that way, because a lot of us are in these same circles. A lot of us have scratched a lot of our own itches, and 37 Signals, it worked great for them in 2005, 2006. But we've all built now 900 bug trackers. We've all built 900 CRM systems. We've all built 900 project management suites. Now, you can always improve on it, but scratching your own itch it's getting harder and harder. And so you know that you're in this scratch your own itch fallacy zone. If you have a problem, that you desperately have this problem, right? I totally need to fix this, and no other software fixes it the way I want it fixed. Very commonly heard with project management software. You know exactly how you want to solve it. You can't wait to start coding, because that's what we do. We build, right? We create. And you don't validate the market. So this is the piece, the validating the market, that I'm going to talk about here. And again, there are multiple approaches to it, but this is the approach that I used. So problems. This is an actual list. This is the Moleskine notebook tattooed on my arm, and it's the list of problems that got me to start Drip. And you probably can't read them from back there, but the top one is I started with problems that startups have. Startups need blog content. Startups need an MVP creator, lean startup, right? Startups need virtual assistants. Startups need email marketing. Startups need a sales website. Startups need to retain customers. And each of those, I went off and started sketching out, well, how would I solve that problem? What are potential ways to solve these problems? The reason I started with startups, and by startups I mean us, self-funded software, maybe venture-backed. The reason I started there is because I do have some reach. I decided for the first time ever I was going to maybe have some reach into my market, because Apprentice Lineman Jobs and .NET Invoice and Wedding Toolbox and even HitTail, none of those were markets that I ever had an audience in. I never had reach. And so when I was starting from scratch on this, realizing I was going to spend a couple years on it, I thought I might as well take a little bit of a competitive advantage for the 9 years that I've invested, to build the audience and do all that stuff. So that's why I started. So you may not start with startups. You may start with countertop installers, and you may have to cold call. You may have to cold email. You may have to cold, what's it called? Snail mail. And that's okay. You may not have reach into the audience, but either way, it can work. So I was able to email some folks that I know, whereas Robert Graham, who's here, when he went after white-tailed deer ranchers, he literally, he cold called, and he had a 100% success rate of getting people on the phone, of getting ranchers on the phone, and being able to find out what is your problem. He built software. It was successful. It wasn't until there was a regulatory lobbyist passed something that actually shut it down. But he had a successful business in the white-tailed deer niche that he really didn't have any reach into. He later wrote a book, coldcallingbook.net, about his whole experience doing customer development there, and I really recommend it. Ted Pitts and Harry Hollander are in the countertop installer niche. They did this same thing. They had no reach into this market. They sent out snail mail, right? Cold snail mail. And which is just crazy. We would never think of that, but they did it and they pulled it off, and they're 11 years into a very successful business. So it can work online. Obviously, if you have reach into a market and you know their problems, it is easier. But don't think that just because you have a problem and because you talk to a few people who have a problem that you validated the market. So once I had the problem, I picked it out and I started writing code right away. All right, good. I heard someone say no. Somebody was listening. So market first approach, this is what I go after, right? I want to try to find the market. Are there enough people that want it? And how am I gonna find those people in the future, right? So my goal was to find 10 founders, 10 software product owners, 10 people really who were willing to pay $99 a month for one of those items on my problems list that you saw in that Moleskine notebook. Now, by this time, I had narrowed it down. I looked at each of them and realized, like, startups may want virtual assistants, but it's kind of a stretch. It's a behavior stretch. Some people do, some people don't. I want to get into a market where I was doing too much education. I knew that there was a lack of, maybe a lack of really good email marketing tools for startups, because a bunch of folks I talked to were saying MailChimp wasn't cutting it, Aweber wasn't cutting it, Infusionsoft wasn't cutting it. There's like no middle ground, so I felt like there was a niche in there somewhere. So I went after founders. Price point was $99 a month, and I emailed 17 people over the course of 8 weeks. I did 2 at a time, and I emailed some founders, I emailed some info product folks that I know, and I emailed a couple bloggers. I kind of ran the gamut, and I was trying to just do research here. This is the exact email I sent. And I'm going to give you a link at the end. You can download all these slides. So I know you can't read this, but for people that I didn't know really well, I said, hey, question about an idea I'm working on. That's what the subject line is. And then I go into, I have a question for you. It's about an idea. And I say, I'm not really looking for general feedback, but more of a, quote, would you pay X dollars per month for the service? I can send over a more thorough explanation if you're up for it. Cheers. So this was the email I sent to Todd Garland of Buy Sell Ads. And I also emailed other people in this room. I mean, I could Patrick McKenzie, Ruben, Jeff from Ambassador, just folks that I had at least, some of them I knew pretty well, in which case I skipped this whole pleasantry thing. Because Todd, I haven't seen in a few years, so I at least wanted to, I didn't just want to cold email him with this big email. People I knew well, I just skip right to this one, which I know you can't even come close to reading. But at the top it says, thanks, I appreciate it, because he had said, yeah, send it over. And I talked through a couple things. I said, here's the idea, and it's in one sentence. And it's called Courier at the time. It wasn't called Drip. And then here's the problem, and it's about email marketing. And then here's an example of it working, because we already had a prototype working on Hittail that had been doing really well for us. Here are the benefits. Here's the price. Important. Here's the price. Because I don't want to know if this is interesting. I want to know, would you pay $99 for it? There's a big difference between those two things. And then the last question is, that's the idea. Would you pay for it? Try it out and see what kind of ROI it provided. Even if you just reply with a yes or no, that would be helpful. Because I know everybody's busy. Everybody replied with paragraphs of text, which is really way more valuable than anybody's $99 a month. Because the people I was talking to are pretty knowledgeable in product, pretty knowledgeable in, just in getting something going. So over the course, let's see. Yeah, so I emailed 17 and I got 11 commitments at $99 a month. It took me 2 months to do it. And all of the people who said yes were software. They were either SaaS, there was downloadable software. All the people who said no were bloggers, info product, and there was one other, and I forget. But it was really quickly, I saw what, and the reason people didn't want to buy was price. They said it's not worth $99. I can cobble this together with other tools. People who saw the value in it really said $99 is a no-brainer. Well, that was right who I was going after, right? Let's make that work. So we started coding December. When I say we, I mean Derek, who's here. It's in Rails, and I don't know Rails. So December 1st, 2012, this is our GitHub code activity thing, and it starts on December 1st. So a lot of code went into that. That was my validation. And you'll see later that it worked and that it was leading me down a path. But I want to conclude this part with the lessons. So the lessons are, start with problems, right? I had the Moleskine list, problems with a niche. Now you can do, Amy Hoy, was it Safari? The Sales Safari, Amy Hoy does it. You can do coldcallingbook.net like Robert Graham. You can do customer development. Patrick Vlaskovitz is here, wrote a book on it. There are other ways to do it. If you are in the niche, it's easier to come up with it just by having some conversations. Niche down. I mean, anytime you hear me say anything, it involves a niche, right? That's my whole deal, is to start small, get the wedge. I was going after software, SaaS, and then we're going to expand into other things. But for you don't want to solve it for all contractors, everyone who does construction. You want to solve it for countertop installers. You don't want to solve it for every rancher in the world. You want to solve it for white-tailed deer ranchers, because then you can own the market. And if you're 1-2 people with no funding, that's what you have to do. You have to do that first. In the email, you want to describe the value you will provide, not screenshots. Don't jump to code, screenshots, data models, specifics. Don't get too specific. And if I have a criticism of what I've done, that email was too damn long. Like, as I read that, I'm like, who the hell, these guys waded through this, like, thank you, you know? If I sent this to you, thank you for not responding with an expletive. Because it was just a long email. Like, I really should have boiled it down a little tighter, I think. So go for the value. The value of Drip at that point was, hey, I'm going to try to help you get more conversions through email, easy email capture. There's some other stuff. The value of Drip is not, then there's this screen where you can enter a user's, like, no one cares at this point, right? And name a price. If you don't name a price, you're really not getting at the core of who is going to pay. Because if I hadn't named that price, there were those other 6, they'd have been on the fence. They would have said, yeah, maybe. I wouldn't really have learned very much. And I would have been going after bloggers and info product marketers and other folks. And then hold your idea loosely. This was the last thing. Because as I received feedback, I started to realize, the idea is good, but it's not exactly what people want. And that was the valuable part, right? Hearing back from Todd Garland or from Jeff and Ruben and these guys who were saying, yeah, I could use that, but it really needs to do this as well in order to be worth 99. It's like, okay, I can't be married to what I thought was a brilliant idea. And even though we all know we're not supposed to be, it's pretty easy to be. So I had to learn to change it real quick. So in the end, what we built was really a minimum viable product. No like buttons there was no delete buttons. You could create all this stuff and you couldn't delete anything. You could barely edit things. You know, it was just all like really rudimentary. But the idea behind Drip is there's a JavaScript snippet that you can install in the footer of every page of your site. It gives you this little widget. It's like a OLARC pop-up, either in the bottom left or on the right or whatever. And you can time it and say, pop up after 9 seconds. And if someone closes it, don't show it to them again for 12 days. And all that's configurable. So it's just a way to instantly, everyone on your site, get capture without having to start embedding forms, you know. And then we actually help. We have a concierge service, and this I'm touching on later because it's been a big win for us, is we help folks. We either give you just templates of, you know, here's 5 emails, here's an entire email mini course, paste your content in, poof, you're done. Or give us a link to 5 blog posts. We will paste them in for you for no charge, poof, you're done. Okay, and that was something, the whole last section is on that. And then we do metrics, all types of this typical metrics, and then we track conversions. And this has been the big one. This is an actual screenshot of what Drip does for HitTail. And this was after a few months. So Drip is very successful with the HitTail customer base. So it's made HitTail a lot of money just being an autoresponder sequence. So this is why the initial seed came up. And you can see why we built this thing for HitTail as a prototype. And I said, boy, it solved the problem. Holy crap, it's making us a lot of money. Code. But I didn't do that, right? I still went out, and it was actually pretty hard, to be honest, to not go out and just start building the damn thing. And Derek kept saying, when are we going to build this? When are we going to build this? And I was like, we got to get 10 or 11 people. So that was the validation. This next thing that I did, I said, Derek, boom, start coding. Here's what I want, or here's the idea. And let's get a landing page up. That was the next thing. And I figured, to be honest, that I would get, like I said, 500 to 1,000 people. And so the question I get is, how did you get 3,400 emails? This is the concentric circle marketing, which I have talked about before. I see it as concentric circles in terms of your reach or your involvement with them. And so the first concentric circle is your audience. So everyone here has even 100 or 200 Twitter followers. Most people here have a blog with even a few hundred or a few thousand visitors. Some people maybe have a podcast. Some people maybe have just a network, a mastermind group. It's anybody who you have their ear. And you're not trying to sell, you're trying to gauge interest. And so what did I do? Actually, I'm going to skip to the what did I do, I'll do on the next slide. But circle 1 is the innermost circle, and concentric circles go out. So that's what circle 1 is. I got about 500 emails from that. They did not convert very well because a lot of people were just like, hey, I just want to see what you're up to. And that's cool, right? They wanted to see how I was marketing it and learn from that, and that's fine. But that converted so-so. I got 600 emails from circle 2, and this is your friends and colleagues networks, right? So you have friends and colleagues who have blogs, podcasts, Twitter feeds, Tumblr, anything, Pinterest. And that was another 600. And I didn't go out cold spamming my friends and saying, can you do this for me? But you'll see on the next slides what I did. And then there was about 500 that was press. I'll talk about that. That's kind of erratic. 900 from Facebook ads, which was really the initial thing I was going to do, because Facebook ads are pretty good for this. And then I wound up getting 900 from a powered by link in the bottom of the drip widget. So I'm going to walk through each of those briefly. Circle 1, as I said, is my audience: podcast, blog, MicroConf, just wherever else. I just did a few talks and stuff. So got 500, which actually, to be honest, isn't that many considering how many interviews I do and how many podcasts and all that stuff. And they converted okay. But it was I was going to be talking about it, creating content anyways. I mean, you're going to be tweeting about stuff anyways. So don't just write a post, hey, I'm launching a new app, but like something I've learned about launching this new app, right? And then that people want to read that. Everybody in this room wants to read something like that. Circle 2, like I said, friends. I was going on Foolish Adventure anyways. I was going on, Brian Castle had invited me to come on his podcast, and TechZing and product people. So while I was on there, actually, they were asking me, like, I heard about Drip, what is it? And I'm like, I don't even want to talk about it yet, because we're like 2 weeks into development. But the more I talked about it, the more traffic gets sent to this landing page. And then Patrick McKenzie was cool enough to mention it in one of his email blasts. And I think he'd seen screens by then. And then Brennan Dunn was an early user, and so he wrote it up, just kind of mentioned it in Plan Scope. And so it was, again, I didn't really ask for these. You could, though. But it wound up being about 600 out of that 3,400. Press was an interesting one. Press is just not my thing. I've never gone after it. I don't see it as repeatable, scalable. I'm just not that good at it. But the more people, the more influencers that I let in, people would email me. So as I was the list started building, then I started emailing screenshots of what was going on. I started getting these replies. So when the list was about 1,000, I started getting I'd send out a blast. Here's what we're building. I'd get 30 replies that would be like, OMG, I totally want to use this. If I didn't know the person, I don't know why I can't let you in now. But someone like, Brennan Dunn, or just someone that I knew who would give me great feedback and who would probably actually use it and be willing to pay for it, would email. And I'm like, well, yeah, of course. Why don't you just check out what we have? It's pretty much alpha right now. The more that happened, people just started talking. And so to have influencers in using your product early is a pretty big deal. And I hadn't thought of this before. And in retrospect, it's like, well, of course it is, right? Yeah, you want influencers in there. But I didn't realize, I guess, how quickly it would spread. So Mashable, who I've never pitched, The Next Web, Chris Lama. Beta list is something you can do, anyone can do, right? You just submit it to beta list, and then Marcus just posted. I think I got 200 or 300 emails from that. Converted so-so, but that was another 500. And then advertising, this is really where I was going after. Facebook ads, because AdWords is too expensive right now, and for what I was shooting after, LinkedIn ads are okay. But I tested the crap out of the headlines, out of the how many people in these different niches, because there are kind of 3 different groups of people who could use Drip. It was the software and startup people, it was the email marketing people, and it was online marketers, right? SEO and digital marketing and that kind of stuff. And I tested different headlines with each of them, and I sent them to all these landing pages, and I was just doing all types of stuff. I got 900 emails, but the more valuable than probably the 900 is by the time we got to launch, I knew, okay, here's who's going to be getting value out of this. Here's who's most interested in which features, and here's how much it's going to cost to reach them if I want to run more ads. So I spent $2,500 to get 900 emails, but importantly, to learn about it. And the last one is this viral loop that I did not count on. And to be honest, this paid for MicroConf for me last year, because Heaton Shah stood up and he said, if you have something with a UI component, have a powered by link on your lower end plans that people can get rid of if they have a higher plan. And as that happened, I was in the back of the room holding the mic for Q&A, and I walked up to Derek and I said, are you noting this down? And he said, I'm building it right now. So, because it clicked with both of us. It was like, how did we not think of this? So that's a big deal, right? 900 out of 3,400. So if you do have a UI component, there's a couple ways to do it. A UI component on your user's site, or if you're sending out emails on their behalf, some people put it in the footer. Like you see MailChimp do this. You see in FreshBooks, It's a fine line in terms of letting people buy out of it or opt out of it. But it's been very valuable for us. And that just keeps going, right? That actually scales, because the more customers we have, the more traffic we get in for that. And it is an affiliate link. So the person whose website they click through So let's say Brennan then has it installed on PlanScope. If someone clicks through on PlanScope and signs up, he does get a commission. Just so it's not like we're keeping all the money. And they can get rid of, you can get rid of it on high plans as well. Like I said, you can buy out of it. There's two valuable pieces to having this list. One is the 3,400 people that you can eventually launch to and hopefully get, a few $1,000 in early revenue, because that makes you feel really good and it makes it sustainable, pays for someone's salary. The other thing is tying into Sherry's talk. A few months into building Drip, though, I started talking to more people, and I had this qualitative data, right, of these 10 or 11 founders I'd emailed with. But then we kind of went radio silent for a few months. Well, it starts creeping in. Doubt just starts going into the back of your mind, and you start thinking, am I really building something that people want anymore? Have I just wandered off the track? You have a few conversations. Hey, you're going to include marketing automation. You're going to include, behavioral email. You're going to include an Android app. And you're just like, no. We're stuck. We're going down, right? So it's like there's no... You start losing confidence. So the other thing I did is when we got up to about 2,500 emails, poof, I sent them a survey. And this was a little bit for my own anxiety to assuage it, but also to confirm that I was still on track. I had qualitative data from those from the 11. I wanted quantitative data. Yeah, all right. I'm not swapping those. Quantitative data, right? I actually wanted true survey and true numbers. So I know you can't read this. It's a Google survey. I put it together. Well, you put it together in 2 minutes, but it takes 30 minutes to write it, right? You got to be very careful with the wording. And this is what I learned from it. The first thing is I asked them, what email marketing problem do you really hope Drip will fix? And I gave them very fixed choices because I didn't want people just filling in a text box. I was really trying to guide them towards things. And I learned that folks wanted more website conversions, a heck of a lot more than they wanted more leads, right? Those things are similar, they're related, but they're not the same thing. More conversions versus more leads. It's different language. I also learned that email workflow, like behavioral email, was pretty important to people, but we couldn't build it. It's like a 4-month feature to be able to move people in and out of lists based on their behavior. We're actually launching that. I mean, it's a year later now. We're launching that in 2 weeks. It took forever to build, but I saw how important it was early on. I also learned, some stuff we were already building was going to nail it for people. I said anything else Drip needs to do in order to crush it for you, and 41% said split testing of emails and sequences. Bam, we had most of that built. Another one was analytics and conversion tracking. Bam, that was a core piece of the product already. And then 13% said they like our cool pop-up opt-in form. So that was like, all right, I got this dialed in a little bit. And then the other things were, which email marketing platform do you currently use? And it was like a huge percentage. It's only about 62% use MailChimp, but then everything else was just scattered. And so I knew that integrating with MailChimp could be a win for us. And the next question then was, are you planning to jump wholesale to Drip, or are you going to stay with MailChimp, and you just want us to feed leads into MailChimp? And 77% said, yeah, I really kind of want to stick with Drip for a while. Stick with MailChimp for a while and feed my stuff into Drip. So kind of have their feet on both islands, right? They didn't trust us as a startup yet, which is fine. But this instantly meant we wanted to do a MailChimp integration. Now, this is where I stumbled a little bit here, because now that we're at a place where we are more of a standalone app, it's not great to basically play second fiddle to other people and have people always canceling because they say, well, everything's in MailChimp anyway, so there's really no, it's not that hard to switch. And in addition, it confused users early on. They said, well, what's the use case of this integration? Because why am I paying MailChimp $50 and then now I'm paying you $50? What more value do you add? So it added a lot of complexity there. And then the last thing I asked was, how do you spend your days? Because I wanted to find out who were the founders, who were the email marketers, who were the online marketers, and then I could segment and say, how did the founders respond to all of these questions? How did the email marketers and online marketers? And it was just one more data point. So this actually lifted my spirits quite a bit, and this is the second value. Like I said, there's 2 pieces of value in having this large list. Number one is, hopefully you'll be able to provide value to a lot of them and have a nice first month. And the second thing is that you can keep your confidence up and get some qualitative data points on what the hell should we build. So I like to have intermissions in my talks because, just because. And it's to kind of break it up so that I'm not just, I spit out a lot of tactical stuff and it's overwhelming, I know. So anyone heard of Dollar Shave Club? All right. So I like this. It's just a startup that did this, and well, you'll hear what they do. But I like the way they did it, and this went viral, and it's just kind of funny.
Hi, I'm Mike, founder of DollarShaveClub.com. What is DollarShaveClub.com? Well, for $1 a month, we send high-quality razors right to your door. Yeah, $1. Are the blades any good? No. Our blades are f***ing great. Each razor has stainless steel blades, an aloe vera lubricating strip, and a pivot head. It's so gentle a toddler could use it. And do you like spending $20 a month on brand name razors? 19 go to Roger Federer. I'm good at tennis. And do you think your razor needs a vibrating handle, a flashlight, a back scratcher, and 10 blades? Your handsome-ass grandfather had 1 blade and polio. Looking good, pop up! Stop paying for shave tech you don't need. And stop forgetting to buy your blades every month. Alejandro and I are going to ship them right to you. We're not just selling razors, we're also making new jobs. Alejandro, what were you doing last month?
Not working.
What are you doing now?
Working.
I'm no Vanderbilt, but this train makes hay. So stop forgetting to buy your blades every month and start deciding where you're going to stack all those dollar bills I'm saving you. We are DollarShaveClub.com, and the party is on.
So that video cost them like nothing to make. That is Alejandro is an actual employee of his. I mean, they did it in a way, it's like awesome, and it was millions of views. So that gives you a break from hearing about this for a minute. All right, 2 more parts. This one's about the slow launch. Then we're going to dive into onboarding and how valuable it was and what we did with it. So this slow launch that I'm talking about comes in 2 parts. The first part is more, you might think of it as customer development. It's like we're launching to one of the short list. Remember the 11 that I got to say yes? We're launching to one at a time, and we're building what they need and then moving on to the next and finding out, do we have everything? Well, we need one more thing. Okay, let's do that. So that you think of that more as like still building the product. Then the second part is this slow launch to the 3,400 people, because you can't just email 3,400 people and actually get them in your app and having a healthy experience at once, unless you have a staff. And we don't have staffs because we're self-funded. So the keys to the slow launch are, I think I have 3 here. First one is to pick the right early customers. This is huge. If I had picked a blogger as my first early customer, it would have been catastrophic for me. So you really have to figure out who is going to be easy enough to work with, that's not going to demand, that's not going to be really disappointed if I don't build a feature that they want me to build, who's going to throw a tantrum, who is going to have the patience to work with me for a month trying to kind of get onboarded, because it can easily take a month to get your first customer onboarded if you really have built kind of a minimum viable thing. So picking the right early customer is critical. Second one, you essentially become a developer for hire. You are like an unpaid consultant. And this is the way we did it, and I don't know how else we could have done it. Derek basically worked 40 hours a week just on this one customer's feature requests, and I worked 10 or 15 just emailing, Skyping, figuring out what we were building, how we were going to build it, that kind of stuff. And the third step, or the third key, is to rush, but to take your time. And the idea here is that you're rushing as fast as you can through the features they're asking, stacking them together, doing sprints, but take your time in getting the next person on. Don't be in a hurry to get customer 2, 3, and 4 on. That's easier said than done. So I had this list of 11, and I picked a friend of mine, Ruben, here in the audience. The reason I picked him is because he fit all the criteria. He knows product. I know he's not going to be upset, if we don't build something, and I felt like he could help guide it. So we spent a month just listening to Ruben say, he already has his whole email marketing thing. He's already using MailChimp. And we said, all right, here's Drip. And he looked at it and he said, dude, you don't even have an embeddable HTML form? Seriously? And so we had to build that, right? It took a week because all we had was our little pop-up. We didn't have a way to embed into HTML. Poof, so we built that. Then he said, wait, you can't send broadcasts? All you are is an autoresponder thing? And I was like, yeah, well, it was this cool idea. And he's like, oh, I send broadcasts like once a week. Okay, so we got to build that. That takes a week or 2. Then he says, I kind of need to pause something, and I'd like to delete a couple of these things, because again, we had no buttons to do anything. So we spent a week doing stuff like that. And then he still had enough people in MailChimp through some other reasons that we did build the MailChimp integration. for him so that he could get leads through Drip, have them in Drip, get in a sequence, and then pop them into MailChimp for that was kind of his central repository for email. And then after a month, we hit a big roadblock and a big rock. So this is one of those times where you feel like you get punched in the stomach because you spent a month and you've already spent 5 months, 6 months building. Then you get someone in, you spend a month building everything they need, and you can't get them using the app. You're like, for crying out loud, I want one customer to be paying me. But we couldn't do it. And it involved a complexity. He was using MailChimp's API to like send different welcome rewards to different people based on landing page. It was just too complicated. We didn't even have an API. And so at one phone call where I was like, oh my gosh, we totally let you down. And he said, I think you should not build this. And he said, I think I'm too complicated. Not build Drip. He said, I don't think you should build this feature that I need. I think you should find another customer. It's not you, it's me. He didn't say that, but I took the hint. So we did. So we moved on, and customers 2 and 3 were actually the first 2 customers of Drip were Jeff from Ambassador and this awesome picture of Brennan Dunn. Look at that. Sorry, Brennan, that was the biggest picture I could find of you. I know you look all goofy in it, but anyways, these guys. What was interesting is we moved on, and I was all downtrodden because I thought, boy, we just pissed a month away. But it turns out both of them needed embeddable HTML forms, broadcasts, the ability to pause things, MailChimp. They were both using that early on. And so we hadn't wasted any time, even though that first month was kind of a failure in my eyes as the founder. So we did have to build a few things to get from there until we actually started getting all 11 folks on. This is kind of our list from Fogbugs of features we implemented. So it's not this is why it's called this slow launch. Like you have to build if you're going to start at this point. And then I started sending the emails. Drip is ready for you. That was the subject line. And boy, that's really small. I'm going to let you just read that later. But it was basically, to be honest, I honed this email. It got shorter and shorter. And this is to John at Pocket Risk. And it basically says, we have no onboarding in this email. It says that. We have no onboarding. But here's your 3 steps. You need to go install the tracking code. You need to go create your campaign, publish it, and then set a goal. And you're done. Let me know if you have any questions, right? So this worked really well, and it got the bulk of those people onboarded. To be honest, the list by this time had grown up to 17 because people kept emailing me wanting to get on, and people were referring people. So it went from 11 to 17, and I think ultimately like 10 to 12 of those were using the app and started paying for it. So it was worthwhile. Now the pricing I dropped down to $49. I'm trying to think if I talk about that later. If not, you can ask me later because I don't have time to talk about it here. But it was just a better price point the more I talked to people. The one wrong turn I did take is, based on a recommendation, I let a blogger into my early access, and I knew in the back of my mind that I shouldn't do this. And it's not, bloggers are great people, but my app is not targeted at bloggers, and I knew this I don't know why I do this, but it was about a week's worth of my time on and off, 25 emails back and forth. He was like, oh, there's a bug in this. And it's like, well, technically that's not a bug. You're not thinking about it the right way. Or technically, you don't really, he was non-technical, so he didn't know what he was looking at, and which is my problem, right? This is my problem as the founder. But he wanted like deep WordPress integration with all these metrics. He wanted an Android app and an iOS app to look at his metrics. He wanted drag and drop template building and then drag and drop visual email building, on and on. He wanted me to build MailChimp. And obviously as a non-developer, this is what you're used to, right? He's been using MailChimp, so he wants very sophisticated tools. And I said, boy, that's like a year. That's probably a year for us, and me hiring other developers. So I killed some time on this one. So this is where coming back, you can easily make a wrong turn. And I'll be the first to say I made a lot of mistakes like this during this whole process. I don't want it to appear like in hindsight, I can tell you I did some things right, but I did probably just as many things wrong. The other benefits, kind of a side benefit, is I had a literal FAQ. I didn't have to make up any of the FAQ because I kept getting these questions over and over. They were frequently asked. I got them via email, via these 17 people. And so all this is a text doc of they would email me, I'd answer it, and then I'd poof into a text doc. Boom, boom. And so by the end, I had like 12 questions. I was like, everybody's been asking these. We need to make our onboarding better, and this is going in the FAQ. So that was kind of cool. So the lessons from this is the first part of the slow launch. And the lessons are to pick the right early customers. That makes all the difference. To Pick early customers with similar needs, right? Who are kind of, if you have a lot of software founders, they're going to need similar things. You get a blogger in there, their needs are probably going to be different. Go high touch. I was probably 20 to, well, in the end, it was probably 25 hours a week I was spending on email and Skype to onboard these 17 people over the course of about 60 to 90 days. It's very, very intense. And then naming your price up front, I already talked about. So when I would email, I'd be like, hey, it's ready for you. It's $49 a month. We're not going to charge you now. Let's wait till you see value. If you never see value, you're not going to pay. If you do, that's it. So I had people with unlimited trial lengths, basically. Don't charge until a customer receives ample value. And this is in that early list, right? This is not the mass emails, because then you have to have a controlled, if you have 300 people onboarding, you can't do this. This is that first 17. It's your first folks that have opted in, your customer development people. And the last thing is save correspondence to build FAQ and trial emails. A little bit of an aside, but I was surprised at how much of that I reused, the stuff that I hand wrote and then said, oh, this is perfect for like my whole trial email sequence. All right, one more intermission, then part 4, and we are eating dinner. Vuza.com.
I'm a bit of an iconoclast, a rebel. I rejected the dogma of other languages and how things are supposed to be. That's why I use Ruby on Rails. Sure, I could program in PHP, but I could also use a sundial to tell me the time. People ask me if we have like a programming schedule. I'll tell you our programming schedule. You ready? It'll be done when it's done. Boom. We at Vuza have a motto when it comes to programming. Fast, good, and cheap. You get 2 out of those 3. And the 2 have to be fast and cheap.
We're all out of good.
Vuza.com is, it's kind of like The Office. It's a bunch of little web snippets that are like that. It's a whole company that they're like making fun of the startup stuff, so it's pretty cool. All right. Oh, goodness. All right, it's 5:12, so I'm going to move a little fast on this one. This is onboarding. And this is one of the keys to how many people we actually got in and got value. We're able to get value out of the app. So remember the setup email I sent to John earlier that was basically just, hey, here's these 3 steps. So we don't have onboarding, do this, do that, do this. That was our onboarding. Like I realized those are the only 3 steps someone needs. And I started realizing as I thought about this, I was like, MPA, the minimum path to awesome. That's what you have to find, the minimum path until someone gets the awesome experience of, holy crap, I just got my first person who purchased, or I just got my first email subscriber, is what I later learned. That was the awesome experience for a lot of people. And so some people have a more complicated one, some people have a very, very much simpler one, but with Drip, which is, think about MailChimp. What is the minimum path to awesome in MailChimp? You kind of log in the first time and you're all disoriented. I don't know. You don't really know what to do, right? With Drip, I said, we gotta niche it down. Well, I'm gonna have 2 steps. First thing is we need to encourage people to install the JavaScript snippet, because without that, we're really not worth much, because you don't have analytics, you can't embed the form, you can't do a bunch of stuff. Second thing is, people don't get value until they have a few emails that they can send out and build this course so that people can actually publish it on their site and say, hey, sign up. Something to encourage folks to give them their email address. And so, with these 2 steps in mind and the optional 3rd step of setting up a goal, like a purchase goal, this is what we did. And what you'll notice is when you log into the app the first time, as soon as you enter your credit card, poof, you're here. This is the app, and there's a blank slate behind it, right? There's a blurred out image that's just going to show you what you're going to see later. And we have this big div in the center, the pop-up. And then we have this thing in the upper left. This whole header is all about onboarding. And I've received a lot of compliments on this approach, actually. And Josh Kaufman yesterday was very kind, and he said, yeah, I'm in Drip, and I'm not finishing some of the steps because I just want to see what emails you're going to send me next. I want to collect them. Like I want to see, how you're approaching this. And so, if you see what this says, it says you're all the way in the upper left. It says you're in setup mode, and there's a red X, and it says create your campaign. And you can really do 2 things. You can learn more, and you can do it now. So learn more is a video screencast of me talking. Do it now is we take you to the page to do it. And that's same with these two buttons. They do the exact same thing down here. You can click around the app if you want. You're not like locked into this page, but it is kind of a wizard walking you through. So as you start to go through, you name your campaign, you give it a title and a headline, and then you get at this point. And this is where it's like, all right, son, you need some emails. And it's like, oh, this is where everyone started bailing, right? So this is where we came to the concierge, and we said, some people want to do it themselves. Let's give them a bunch of templates, like entire sequences where they just paste in their content. 5-day sequences, a month sequence, blah, blah, blah. Let's also offer to do it for free for them. I have a support guy, taught him how to do it. If you send an ebook to us or you send 5 blog links that are kind of related, we build the course for free. Started charging for it early on. That was not a good idea, right? The lifetime value is in getting them using it, not in this upfront fee. And then, so the free concierge is there. Choosing a blueprint is the middle one. And then totally custom, I pass along my cost. I pay a copywriter $500, totally custom email course, and they build it. So this was the idea, is to like go one step. How do you go one step further than MailChimp, right? MailChimp's not doing this. They're big and they're very successful, but how can I be different than them? And this is the approach. So this gets a lot of people past this step, because a lot of people just say, well, yeah, I'll just have you build it. Sure, I have blog content. It's a piece of cake. I don't have to do anything. And those are some of the templates that we can take a look at them later. And then if they do that and they get it live, then JavaScript comes next. You see now that one's clear, and then this little red X is basically the JavaScript snippet saying install that. And then once they get done, the header goes away and they can actually use the app. So that's the basic aspect, the basis of the onboarding. I do have one tip. If you need someone to install JavaScript tracking code, integrate with segment.io, because there's quite a few people using that now. And if your customer is using segment.io and you've integrated with them, then installing your app is one click in the segment.io dashboard, right? Because they take segment.io's code and they put it in their footer, and then they'll just say, well, I want to activate Drip and Hittail and Google Analytics and poof, 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 and it puts it all there. It renders it out. So segment.io is pretty cool. I have both Hittail and Drip integrated. If you're installing tracking code, it's a good idea. Last couple things. Trial emails. This is the raw text from a couple of them, but we basically say the same thing that we said in the app, but we start saying it in the email with a little bit of a value proposition. Welcome to Drip. This is a welcome email, right? Our goal, I don't go on and say, hey, welcome to Drip, get signed up, or get this thing going. I say, our goal is to help you make more money by enabling you to easily create an email mini course. No. So first thing is, here's the value. This is my goal. And then it says, setting up takes 3 steps, and it's the same. It's the 2 steps plus the optional that I've already mentioned. So you're basically saying the same thing again a couple times. So the lessons from this part are to determine your app's minimum path to awesome, guide your new users through it using some kind of a wizard approach, something in the GUI so they're not abandoned when they sign in, and then do it again via email, right? Which is really what I've done here. And finally, to consider a concierge if you can swing it at all. It's made a huge difference. And this is the results. Like by the time we were done getting these 3,400 people on, 60% of them were activated, fully activated. We got 60% of trials to install JavaScript and get a 5-day email course live. I don't know if you realize how hard that is, but that's a very high number for that kind of effort. So it's good. I want it to be more, of course, but it's pretty good. So last, I think I have 2 slides remaining maybe. The slow launch, part 2, the last part of this, what's funny is the hard work was done before I emailed the first of the 3,400 people, right? I have 3,400 people now to email, but I know that a huge chunk of them are going to be able to get onboarded, automated, because I've done all this hard work with the first 17. So by the time the launch came, the hard work for us was done. So slow launch part 2, wait until onboarding is working. Wait until you have at least a few people who've done it. Divide your list into cohorts. So I had 3,400. You may have, let's say you have 1,000. Take 10 to 20% of them, poof, send the email sequence, get them onboarded. You send this launch email sequence with a time-limited discount. This is my formula I've been talking about for years. When you get the slides, that link launch email sequence it's a 4 email sequence, the exact emails I sent for Drip, and it has all the images and all the stuff, so you can see how I did it. And I'm probably going to take that down in about a week. I haven't published that anywhere, and I don't really plan on it. So being at MicroConf, you can download it. I think it's a zip file of Word docs. That's what it is. Then you wait trial length days. Trial length is 21 days, whatever, 14. You wait because you got to see who gets through, where do they have problems, and then you repeat it until your list is done. And that's what we did. 300 to 600 people at a time. We onboarded 3,400 people, not all of them, obviously, but as many signed up over the course of, I'm trying to think if that took 3 months. I think it was 3 months to do that. And the result, of course, was $7,000 in recurring revenue in month one.
Hi, Rob.
Hi,
Erica
Erica.
here from Market Vibe. I'm so excited about your talk because I feel like we're twins in a way. It's weird. We just launched with the 10 customers thing, and we did it by invite only. We're doing similar customers. I was taking frantic notes the entire time, so I really appreciate everything that you said.
Cool.
And I just sent our CTO a message and said, we need to integrate with segment.io.
Cool, perfect.
So I was wondering, this is, I guess, kind of a weird question and maybe an obvious question, but we have 3 people currently full-time with us, and we have one SaaS that makes enough money to pay one person full-time, but not 3. We've tried to close that gap with funding and do the same kind of slow launch. And I was wondering, how did you work it out with your employees so that you could pay them while you did the slow launch, or did you not pay them?
I'm all about, Derek wouldn't have been happy if I didn't pay him. My approach is like long-term and repeatable. Like that's kind of been my whole thing, is a few $1,000s a month in 2005 and just build that up. What paid Derek's salary and my salary during this time was HitTail, was my last project. So for me, I like Heaton's words, self-funded. I am self-funded. I've funded myself from my previous efforts. And I started with a FeedShot that made $50 a month, and I put that, and then I .NET Invoice that made $2,000 a month, 1 to 2,000. And then I leveraged that, and you know what I'm saying? And I leveraged each one. So I did pay him. It's because I had a previous something. So yeah.
I was curious about, of all the people that you had sign up, whether or not they actually stopped putting their feet in both camps of MailChimp and Drip, or just went whole hog for one versus the other.
Yeah. I don't have exact data on it. I know that there are still people doing both. At this point, aside from like fancy email templates and drag and drop, and Android app and iOS, yeah, there's a bunch we don't have. But we have the basics. So we have a lot of people who have stopped doing the MailChimp thing because it's just, easier to stay with Drip. But we do have people doing both, I got to be honest. I hope to fix that, but you can't fix it on day one. You know what I'm saying? Like day one, you have a 4-month-old product, and MailChimp's like 9 years ahead of you. And again, I'm not chasing MailChimp. We're actually going into email marketing automation, to be honest. We're going after Infusionsoft, Office Autopilot. That's our next market, and that'll be in the next 1 to 2 weeks. But yeah, it's a good question. It definitely was a bridge. I don't regret building we built MailChimp, Aweber, couple others. I don't regret building those because it allowed people to feel more comfortable using Drip and not feel like they had to, they couldn't stand on both islands. I think it's, we'll leave them in, but it was more of a temporary thing. I don't think we're going to build 50 integrations, Mad Mimi and all these other things,
How did you figure which price you would set for your product, especially since in your first initial 11 people, 17 and then turned
right.
11, you said you wanted to see what the response was, and then some bloggers would say, hey, it's not worth the price, but maybe it would have been 5 people would have been okay with the 99, but not the rest, and
sure.
maybe you could have tweaked it. I'm just curious.
Yeah, so Josh Pigford said earlier, 99. Do you want a $9 or a $99 customer? And so when I originally thought of Drip, I said, I want an app. I've already done HitTail, right, which has $10, $20, $40, $80 price points. And I realized I wanted the bottom end to try to be 100. That was my goal, was to do my next app bigger, and which means the bottom end should be larger. So that was my initial goal. The further I got into it, the further I realized I'm going to need like a year to get there. So ultimately, once we launch this marketing automation, people will be grandfathered in who are using it, but we're going to raise prices because then it's worth it. Because all the other, we're going to have the same feature set or very close to things that charge $300 and up. So yes, I want to get there, but I realized I was trying to jump the gun and say, hey, look, we coded for 5 months and I want to charge everybody $99. It's not a no-brainer price. So that's why I backed off. I actually had a conversation with Patrick McKenzie and a couple other people who I trust. I'm in 2 masterminds, and I asked everybody, and we batted it back and forth about the pros and cons and looked at everything. And eventually I decided, it was a gut call, but it was the feedback I was getting was $99 is not a no-brainer, and you don't have name recognition yet. And so I said, all right, yet, right? You don't have it yet, so that's what we're working for.
How did you iterate on each new launch that you did?
Yeah,
and
good.
was there something or a few things specific that you learned as you went
that
converted each new group better than the last?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, you have this 3,400 people, and then you send an email to 300. You look what happened. What do you change, right, for the next 300? I don't think I made some changes, but it was nothing so big that I think it made a difference, to be honest. I didn't split test. If I had more time, I was in Europe for a month of this at MicroConf Europe, and if I had more time, I would have split tested emails and done all that. I didn't do that, to be honest. Yeah, and we did update the onboarding because some people got confused. So it was more user feedback stuff where it was like, oh, do I really need to do this third step? We had goals built in. You have to enter a goal. You have to say how much you're going to get if someone buys something. And people were like, only 10%, 15% of people knew what that was. So we did make that optional in the end and really toned it down. I got feedback from a couple people who said, your emails are kind of like, feel like you're pushing your agenda rather than trying to help me. So I toned the verbiage. Instead of saying, get onboarded, I was kind of like, hey, Drip's here. It can do this for you. So I did stuff like that, but I wasn't super analytical and A/B split testy about it, which normally I would be, but yeah, just on this one. There's only so much time, Yes.
Was the last question about where you segmented the emails out to the customer 10 or 20%?
Yes, and it was whether I changed them from launch to launch. I tweaked some little things, the answer was, but I didn't make dramatic changes.
Well, actually, that was my question, so.
Okay, cool.
Thanks.
Awesome talk. How did you come up with the budget for your Facebook ads to get those 900 emails?
I didn't come up with a budget. What I said was, I'm going to go and spend a couple hundred and see how much I have to pay per email and then do a judgment call. And you run quick math on it, right? And I got to where it was between $3 and $4 per email collected. So they click through and you pay so much and then wherever it was converting. And I started doing math of like, all right, if I get 1,000 people from Facebook, I'm going to spend $3,000 to $4,000. Yes, it was a little under $3, right? Because I think I said I spent around $2,500. But let's say I spent $3,000 on Facebook ads. If I'm charging $49 a month, most people know lifetime value is going to be between 6 and 24 months, even early on. And so you do a quick math. You don't have to convert many of those 1,000 people to pay for itself. So as long as you have that self-funded bucket, I was spending as much as I could manage and still get the app done. I was just cranking the Facebook ads. That was as much as I could spend at the time. So, all right, maybe one more. It's pretty late. Yeah, sorry. Yep.
So, do you have other ideas about a viral loop that you mentioned about powered by Drip? What other methods are there?
I don't know because I'm not a big viral. Like that's never been I have a tool belt, right, of things I know, and virality has never been one. So I literally stumbled upon it when Heaton said it. We implemented it. It worked fantastic. I would say go to someone like Andrew Chen, go to his blog and read about it. Or there has to be someone. Heaton, who knows a lot about virality and who could a viral loop. Heaton said there's a lot of content online. In most cases, you don't need it. What you did with the powered by is as good as it gets. Or in the bottom of an email or something. I mean, yeah, I don't know that I have more on it because I just haven't. It's not my wheelhouse, It works great, but yeah, that's where it is. That's it, eh? Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.